how IT is driving results key to managing the contact center. My name is Marlee Cittadino, and I'll be moderating the webinar today. Before we begin, I would like to make a couple notes. All participants are in listen-only mode. We ask that you please use the Q&A panel to pose any questions to our experts. And then finally, we will be sharing a recording of this webinar after the session concludes. So I'd first like to start by introducing MindSight. We are an IT services provider with a broad range of knowledge and expertise across all areas of the technology landscape. The team that will be presenting today are part of our contact center team. This team helps organizations improve the customer experience and customer loyalty through business process and technological improvements. We're based in the Chicago suburbs, starting out our 14th year in business, and our approach has always been focused on the needs of our customers. We service those needs by investing in our engineering talent and are continuously making improvements to ensure we offer the highest level of performance. In addition to myself, John Irie and Clay Jedi will be presenting our webinar today. With nearly 30 years combined experience in the contact center space, John and Clay will be giving us a unique view of how cloud contact center solutions have made an impact across the industry. As we look at the agenda over the next hour, we'll be covering how the contact center has evolved, the platform options available today, and what factors are driving organizations in making their platform decisions. We'll also take a look at what challenges contact centers are facing, both from an IT and a business perspective. We'll dive into the trends we're seeing in the industry today, look at the pros and cons of an on-prem versus cloud deployment, the adoption curve, pricing comparisons, and then finally a few case studies before closing out the hour. From here, I'm going to transition first over to John to begin with the evolution of the contact center.
Great, thanks, Marlee. So yeah, I'm John Irie. I'm one of the principal consultants here at MindSight, and I focus myself on Cisco contact centers, but we have a whole range of offering here. So I'm sure many of you growing up had encyclopedias in your house. I know I had a couple different sets. One of them was older, you know, it was kind of like we don't want to look at that one. It probably doesn't have what we're going to look for. And we had a newer set that I'm guessing we probably bought from a door-to-door salesman. But then eventually those got old and we moved on to going to the library. And obviously lots of other people were there looking at encyclopedias at the library, and it was kind of a group collection that everyone could use. And then as I got older, things like Google became available, things like Wikipedia. And in fact, in 2012, the Britannica company stopped printing their encyclopedias, and now they just have Britannica.com, where you can go join and you can get the information online. Similar shift when we think about manufacturing. If you go back into the 1900s with major manufacturers, they actually used to generate their own power in their facilities, and they would facilitate their factories in areas where they could have enough land to not only have their factory, they'd be by a river to get their raw materials or railroad, and they also had to have area for power generation. The grid simply wasn't reliable. But as the power grid got more reliable and as power became cheaper, they were able to shift their focus away from generating power onto their core business of whatever they were manufacturing and just start buying the power reliably from the grid. And we've seen something similar when we think about data centers. And when I first got started, everything was, kind of server-based. A lot of companies had big data centers in their buildings. And we saw a shift to kind of an infrastructure model where people would move their servers to a data center, and they were able to focus their network resources, their engineering resources, away from maintaining a data center and having a specialized room in their building toward doing whatever it is that their company specializes in, or just focusing on the network or the phone system, whatever it might be that the IT was worrying about. So we've seen a similar shift when it comes to software. When I started in the contact center space, pretty much everyone was premise-based. And that pretty much implies that you're buying servers, you're buying switches, you're buying gateways, you're buying all the licensing. It's usually a pretty big upfront cost. But then you have that cost sunk in, and then you're worrying about maintenance, upgrades, things like that. I saw a shift to the hosted model in my career where people started going, again, to that infrastructure model where they moved the servers out of their data centers and into a hosted data center. I had one company, or one company in particular that was a major suburb in Chicago that they had a green initiative, and with a combination of virtual machines kind of shrinking their footprint that way, but also moving those servers out of their data center, they were able to really achieve their green initiative. And now if you go to their city hall, what used to be a massive data center in the basement area is now conference spaces and things like that. And they've simply moved it off to let someone else worry about power generation, all those types of things that are going on to run a data center. The next logical progression from there were platforms as a service. And in the contact center world, that typically means, you know, you no longer are buying your server hardware, you're never buying your licenses, you're just paying for what you use every month. One differentiator between a platform and what I would consider to be a true cloud is that oftentimes in the platforms, you're still on a single tenant system where they've spun up dedicated machines for your contact center. So if you think about things like maintenance, upgrades, all those things, you still have maintenance windows, you know, you still have upgrade cycles to think about, but you are just paying for, you know, what you use. And the more modern approach to that now is the cloud, and we're seeing a lot of traction there. And when we think about the cloud, Clade is going to talk a little bit later more specifically about this, but you know, we see people looking at the cloud. The cloud infers that you are on a multi-tenant solution. You are getting the benefits of, you know, the demands of other users, whether it be security or things like that. Everybody benefits from the development that goes into it, and you don't typically have those upgrade cycles or maintenance cycles where if a new feature is created, you generally get it right away in the cloud. Whenever they're done building it and they've tested it, everyone can benefit. And we're seeing a lot of traction with our customers in the cloud, particularly like Avaya customers. Customers are thinking about moving off of premise or moving off of a system. With the Avaya example, you know, there's been a lot of turbulence with Avaya, and people are looking to maybe change platforms. Well, it's a great opportunity to think about, you know, do I want to buy another premise-based system? Do I want to make that investment up front, or do I just want to pay monthly? When we talk about, you know, platform as a service, infrastructure as a service, or clouds, it can be a little confusing. So sometimes it's good to take a step back and look at this model of what if we just wanted to eat some pizza? So if we think about eating a pizza, it can kind of follow the same basic guidelines. So for a premise-based model, that would be the made at home. And so we have things like we're providing our own table, our drinks. We have an oven that requires gas and fuel, and we make our pizza dough. We provide the ingredients, we make the pizza. That's the premise-based model. If you think about infrastructure as a service, that would be the take and make model. So now you're relying on an outside vendor to provide some things for you. You no longer have to be an expert in making the dough, putting the pizza together, or you know, bringing all the ingredients into it. Instead, you just go pick up the pizza, bring it home, bake it. You're still providing, you know, the oven, the table, you're still eating it at home, but you've kind of given up some of that stuff that you don't have to focus on those core areas. When you think about the platform as a service, this would be like you had a pizza delivered. You're no longer in the pizza making business at all. So basically, if it's, you know, making the dough, putting the ingredients on the dough, baking the pizza, that's all being handled for you. And at the end of the day, it's delivered to you, you pay for what you used, and you basically eat it at home still. You have your table, things like that. And then finally, we have the software as a service or cloud model, and that's basically that you decided to dine out. You went to the restaurant, you ate your pizza, you pay for what you ate, and you leave. You didn't have to worry about any logistics around it. So what we see here is a depiction of Moore's Law, and basically what that is in 1965, Gordon Moore noticed that the number of transistors per square inch on integrated circuits had doubled every year since the invention. So I'm not really here to talk about Moore's Law, but why it's important is that we've seen, and there have been studies around, when you look at IT in general and new technology, when new technology gets attention and starts to get funding and focus, its advancement follows a similar curve. So if you think about something like cell phones, for example, go back to the left side here, we've got, you know, an older cell phone, and then we move across, we've got all the various Nokia models. I'm sure many of you had these. You know, we were doing voice, we started doing text messaging, and then finally, you know, maybe some calendaring and things like that, but finally in 2007, Apple introduced the iPhone. And it was really a game changer in the direction we went with our cell phones. And if you think about what we do now with our cell phones, may have clicked twice here. If you think about what we do with our cell phones, it's replaced so much in our lives. You know, I used to carry around a music player, a point-and-shoot camera, but now it's like with my cell phone, I've got music, I've got my camera, I've got a payment vehicle, I've got my calendar. I always laugh that, you know, when I used to go on vacation with my dad, he would have a travel alarm clock. I've never owned such a thing. I just rely on my phone. So our cell phones have really taken a big foothold in our lives and really replaced a lot of those features for us. Now, the big thing about the advancement of technology, things like the cell phone, is it's helped bring us into the age of the customer. And when we talk about the age of the customer, what I mean is, in the early 1900s, it was the age of manufacturing, the big manufacturers. In the 60s, we moved into the age of distribution. Companies like Walmart and Toyota. You know, Walmart was able to take advantage of just-in-time inventories because of better logistics and kind of spread their stores across the country. In the 90s, we moved into the age of information. Companies like Amazon and Google came to fruition. And then finally, in the 2010 era, we moved into the age of the customer. Companies like Macy's have databases about customers and their buying and purchasing decisions. Salesforce.com helps companies track their customers and what they do as far as interacting with their brands. USAA has become a real leader in using technology to make the purchasing and interaction with the customer much easier. And then companies like Amazon, obviously, we've all probably used them, not only make the transactions easy, but it also kind of sets the standard of what we expect from the companies we do business with. When we talk about the age of the customer, what that really means is we've had a shift in the purchasing decision. It used to be that the information was in the control of the sellers. So take, for example, buying a car. You know, the first car I ever bought, I walked into the dealer. I probably had talked to some friends, you know, my circle of peers about people that may have owned that car, and I said, oh, you know, what did you guys pay? What do you think of the car? You know, I didn't have much outlet as far as understanding, you know, what's the reliability of that car? Like maybe I could look at Consumer Reports for that, but it wasn't like a national thing. I could go talk to people. Now, when I buy a car, the last car I bought, I went to a website forum where there was a new owner check-in, and I found out what everybody around the country was paying for that make and model. I was able to scan the forums, find out what problems they were having with the car. In my particular model, I found out it better be made after X date because they changed something on the car to make something else not happen anymore, a problem they were having. And the information completely shifted towards me, and I was able to walk into that dealer completely informed, and when they gave me their first proposal, I knew exactly where to come back and say, look, this is the bottom dollar, this is what I'm willing to pay. And I was right, and I walked out with that car. In a similar instance, you know, companies like Amazon have helped us using our mobile apps. I was in another retailer where I was trying to buy a bag, and it was a really long line. They had the bag in stock, but I went and stood in line. It was a long line. It wasn't moving. I was frustrated. And I just took my phone out of my pocket, and I scanned the tag with my Amazon app, and I found out I could save almost $100 on that bag. And I was already frustrated, and I was able to see on this company's website that they don't match pricing. So I put the bag down and I walked out. You know, I know brick and mortar stores struggle to compete with Amazon, but if we think about it from how easy things have become for us, just doing interactions with Amazon or other web services, it really has become the point that you and your contact center need to think about those things. How can we make the transactions easier for our customers? How can we make doing business easier? And that's really what the age of the customer means when we talk about the call center. This picture kind of depicts a switchboard in a company. In the early days, these people are all dedicated to getting calls to the right person in the company. What we have here is a Continental Airlines representative who, in 1973, Continental Airlines worked with Rockwell to create the first ACD, or automated call distribution system. And so now Continental Airlines didn't have to think about having a whole room full of switchboard people to get calls to the right people. They now had an ACD that got calls to the people. And as we apply that curve to the technology, since then, we've obviously seen a big growth in ACD. we now have skills-based routing. We have different proficiencies. We have the ability to look at, basically getting the right call to the right person at the right time. And then if we look at it even further in the contact center in general, we're now handling more than just calls. We've got, obviously, our calls, our IVR, our voice-enabled things. We're also handling email. We're handling social media. We're handling chat. We're handling documents, and maybe even some mobile interactions. That growth curve continues to fuel the contact center and the technologies we use, but it creates a challenge for IT to keep up with it, and it creates a challenge for the business side, the contact center people, to say, hey, we want to make things easier for our customers. How can we do that? And then IT pushes back and says, we need to plan for this. We need to do these things. It creates a real challenge, and that's kind of what Clade is going to talk a little bit more about here.
Hi, my name is Clade Jadai. I'm one of the principal consultants here at MindSight. I've been here for about 6 years and have been in the contact center industry for about 15 years. John did a great job covering the evolution of the contact center and how customer expectations have changed in the age of the customer. I'll start off by reviewing some of the challenges that contact center managers and IT departments face on a daily basis. Then we'll continue with a detailed comparison of cloud and premise-based platforms. And finally, we'll explain a simple roadmap to maximize your investment of the premise solution you might have today and how to plan for the future. So every time we get involved with a new customer, with a new company, one of the first things that we try to figure out is who is making the decision. 10, 15 years ago, it was very easy for us to tell that because IT departments were very involved in the decision-making process for contact centers. Contact center platforms were very complicated. They were very dependent on IT. Sometimes, we had to do wiring of phones at every desk, and IT was extremely involved, and the features weren't there for the business to really be part of the decision-making process. Nowadays, the tables are turned. Contact center managers really want to provide the best customer service and really want to use customer service as a competitive advantage. But some of the challenges that the business leaders, business contact center managers face every day is, they're really busy. They have a full-time job of retaining agents, meeting current SLAs, but they don't have the time to focus on customer journeys or learn more about the contact center platform. Nowadays, we're also seeing more and more companies have roles like customer experience officer. These positions are created just to help companies provide better customer service. We also have companies like Amazon, where their ultimate goal is to be the most customer-centric company in the world. If you think about that for a second, Amazon, one of the biggest companies in the world, their goal from the very beginning was to be very customer-centric, and that's how they have grown to be one of the biggest retail companies in the world. Most contact centers are also viewed as call centers from upper management, so it's very hard for them to get budget sometimes. So it's very important to work with your upper management and help them understand that providing great customer service can be a great tool when competing with other companies. The last point here that John already talked about this, but customers are expecting more and more from customer service. They're expecting more and more from companies. They want that customer service experience to be effortless, right? If you can think about any question within a couple of seconds, you're able to Google it and find answers, right? So they expect the same thing from customer service departments. The other point is that bad customer experiences, negative customer experiences can go viral really quickly. So customer service leaders have to worry about training the agents to make sure that they're not offering really bad customer experiences, because those experiences can go viral. Just a few years ago, we had the example of United dragging a passenger off a plane, and we all know how quickly that video went viral. And a couple of years before that, we had the example of Comcast trying to, we had a blogger that was trying to move away from Comcast and shut down his service, and the customer service rep on the phone was so aggressive, the blogger actually recorded that call and put the recording up on the web, and that basically was a very negative reputation for Comcast, and it caused them to retrain most of their agents. So as we move over to IT, as we all know, IT departments are always busy working on projects or putting out fires. Often they don't have the time to specialize in contact center software or keep up with current trends. Premise-based platforms have increased in complexity and have become very custom over the years. Most contact centers, are usually using 3 or more different products to run their call centers. I can think of at least a dozen of our customers that have on-premise platforms that might be using a different product for their telephony PBX, right? And they might have a different product for their queuing, voice queuing, and ACD functionality. They might have a different system for their chat channel. The same thing for workforce management. They might have a different system for workforce management, call recording, and quality evaluations. Even though these systems are integrated, they still have very different management interfaces. And this makes it really hard for IT departments to be experts in this area. This is where we come in as consultants, right? We are able to specialize in this area and bring in a lot of expertise to the table. We also work with a lot of different customers, and sometimes it's much easier for us to troubleshoot something because we have seen it before. We also are very good at applying good ideas that we have learned from past experiences or applying current trends. So trends, it's usually what starts the conversation between IT and the business. Business leaders might go to a conference or might attend a webinar just like this one, or might read a blog about trends, and they demand that IT deliver some of these great new features that everyone is talking about. One of the biggest trends we're going to be focusing on today is the move to the cloud. We'll be spending a lot of time in the next slides here talking about the cloud, but I also wanted to mention some of the other trends that are playing a major role in the contact center world in the near future. One of them is AI, artificial intelligence, and chatbots. For many years, they were just buzzwords, but today they're becoming reality. The common requests via chat are usually fulfilled by a chatbot. The chatbot tries to understand the request, try to understand what the customer is asking. They take that, sometimes they go in and do a lookup inside of a knowledge base and give the customer the answer. Sometimes they might go inside of a CRM, or if the customer is asking for account information, they might go into a database and pull out some account information. I had an example. I was chatting with Asus Computers because I had RMA'd my computer a couple of weeks ago, and I still didn't have a status on it. I was going back and forth, and I literally couldn't tell if I was talking to a human or a chatbot, right? I was going back and forth, and the answers were so quick, I was convinced I was talking to a chatbot. Natural speech, it's also playing a major role in combination with artificial intelligence. So think of this as IVR on steroids. Some common tasks examples might be robocalls, interactive appointment reminders, maybe scheduling a doctor visits. We're at the point today where artificial intelligence combined with natural speech can handle some of these common tasks that agents used to handle in the past. The new generation is getting used to talking to computers. We have an Alexa at home, and my kids talk to Alexa all the time, right? They ask her about the weather, they ask about, maybe help with their homework. So my kids are growing up talking to computers, and it's going to be natural for them to go out and get customer service via, natural speech-based IVRs. The other big trend is it's an effortless customer experience. CB Research used to be an independent company that just got purchased by Gartner, but about 4 years ago, they were an independent company that they set out to figure out what was important to customers. And one of the things that they found was that all customers wanted a quick, direct resolution to their issues. They didn't really care about being delighted. They didn't really care about customer service reps going above and beyond. All they wanted is somebody to resolve their issue as quickly as possible. And another thing that was interesting that came out of this research is that the channel wasn't very important to them either, right? And most of them actually preferred a self-service channel over a phone call. So they wanted to find the answer by themselves by going on a website or using a voice IVR. The bottom line is that customers want to get their issue resolved with the least amount of work on their part. And we're seeing even companies, some of the new startups, starting on this idea that by providing an effortless experience that they can disrupt existing companies. Uber is probably one of the best examples of this. Like if you think about Uber, Uber never really invented anything. They just took the experience of somebody having to call a cab, tell them where they are, wait for that cab, or maybe standing in the corner in the call trying to wave down the taxi. Now, and making sure you have money and giving the cab driver direction. Now they took that experience and they made it effortless by moving everything over to an app that gives the customer more control. The last trend here is omnichannel, which also plays a big role in providing an effortless experience. This term, in my opinion, has been a little bit overused over the last 3 years. The idea behind it is that it's really simple. The goal is to achieve a continuous conversation between an organization and a customer. Just like when we have a conversation with each other, we can start having a conversation in person among each other and then switch to text or switch to email. The same idea applies to organizations as they communicate with their customers. The big problem has been that every time I called customer service in the past, it felt like I was starting a conversation over and over again. Like every time I had to explain myself from the beginning. Omnichannel, by bringing all that information together and making customer service reps aware of our past interactions, it's basically trying to provide that continuous conversation that we have with other people. As I mentioned earlier, one of the biggest trends this year is the move of contact centers to the cloud, and we're going to frame a lot of this discussion around the cloud. The platform that the contact center runs on is very important, and we really want to give you guys an unbiased view of the pros and cons of these platforms. We are a reseller of both premise and cloud platforms, so we just want to take our time for the rest of this presentation and go over those different details that we have as far as cloud and premises is concerned. So starting off with the premise, in the early days, one of the biggest concerns with cloud solutions was that, people were concerned about security. So everyone's concerned that their data was going to get mixed up with other customers' data, because most cloud providers have a multi-tenant environment. That is not the case any longer. We have seen that some aspects, premise solutions in some aspects are superior, and one of those scenarios is when a hack occurs. Like if somebody hacks or hacks your environment, it's very easy to shut down a premise-based system and contain that leak. But it's almost impossible to do that in a cloud environment, right? We cannot there's no way to shut down the cloud because we have multiple customers running on that cloud. Some advanced functionality like PCI compliance and HIPAA are also better developed for premise solutions because software manufacturers have been developing this for many years, right? And they work much better on-premise versus the cloud. Cost can also be lower with a premise system. You know, if you keep the premise system for a long term, 10 or more years, and you really don't upgrade it on a regular basis, you know, the cost over the 10 years, it's usually going to be lower, but you're not going to have the latest features, right? Think of this as buying a car versus leasing a car. You know, if you buy a car for 10 years, and if you buy a car and keep it for 10 years, you're going to have a lower cost of ownership. On-prem solutions also have the advantage of having, of controlling who your telco is going to be, where you're going to get your PRIs from. You can plan your upgrades, and you really have more opportunities for customization. So some of the cons for the premise side of the house here. Some of the cons are, I think I lost my PowerPoint. Sorry about that. Let me go back here. Sorry about that. So the biggest downfall of the premise-based system is redundancy. You know, it doesn't matter what companies do to create a fully redundant system, they're always going to fall short of a cloud provider. If you think of cloud providers, like some of the biggest ones, like AWS or Microsoft Azure, they have been developing their data centers for many years. You know, like AWS has 20 geo-redundant data centers spread all over the world. This is very hard to achieve with a single location or even multiple locations. Companies doesn't have the resources to create a fully redundant environment. I've been involved in many projects where, you know, customers try to create a fully redundant environment, but there's always some weak point, whether it was, you know, having a single power provider, not having a generator, maybe having a single telco provider. Just a couple of months ago, we had a customer that AT&T took offline for 3 days because they cut the wrong cable, right? They were doing a construction project and they cut the wrong cable, therefore taking them offline for 3 days. Premise-based solutions can also be behind on features because development cycles are usually much longer on prem-based solutions, and also customers have to go through expensive upgrades to get those features. You know, right now, I'd probably estimate that most prem customers are probably 2 or 3 years behind on features. Scaling up and down can be a challenge. You know, when you're a prem customer, you really have to plan for the future. You have to plan for your business time, right? We have a retail customer that throughout the year has about 100 agents, but at Christmas time, they're willing to scale up to 300 agents. So for them to scale up to 300 agents, they have to purchase 200 extra licenses for ACD. They have to bring in more PRIs, more SIP trunks. So just for those 2-3 weeks of their visit time, they have to spend a lot of money and do a lot of planning to make that happen. So now that we look at the cloud, I just want to really quick mention that here we're referencing a true cloud provider. You know, we're referencing a cloud provider that is 100% web-based. You know, this is the last option that John mentioned in the pizza eating out, going to a restaurant option, right? This is the option where you as a customer are not bringing anything to the table. You're just running the call center. The first thing with the cloud here is that the cloud is 100% scalable. If you think of the example I just gave with a retail customer, you know, they could have gone from 100 to 200 agents for a month and just pay for that extra 100 agents or 200 agents for whatever time they used it. They didn't need to spend all that money up front to make that happen, right? So there's basically no planning required. You just pay for what you use. The cloud is also very easy to manage. Basically, all the management interfaces are web-based and very simple to use. What I usually tell my customers is, if you can use Microsoft Visio and you are a little bit technical, you should be able to manage most of your environment in the cloud. The cloud is also up to date and has the latest features automatically. You know, the biggest selling point for the cloud is that customers don't really have a need for on-site infrastructure. You know, we're working with a company a couple of years ago, and they were actually evicted from their offices downtown Chicago. You know, they were in litigation with the company that used to own them. And as part of the court decision, they had to move from their current office in 2 weeks, right? So they decided to leave their Avaya system behind, and we set them up with a new cloud contact center provider. So they used a mix of soft phones running on PCs and cell phones, and everything was managed from a web browser. So within 3 days, they were up and running, taking calls using cell phones as remote numbers, or using soft phones on their PC. And all they have to do is basically log into the browser. They were, like I said, they were up and running in 3 days, and now they're one of the biggest resellers of Medicare supplement plans in the U.S. That could have never happened with a premise-based system. But cloud also has the downfalls, right? One of the biggest disadvantages of the cloud is those monthly charges. You know, monthly charges are usually much higher than just paying maintenance on the premise systems. Customizations can be challenging, especially if you're trying to integrate a cloud system with a premise system. There's also the existence of over 400 different startups that are offering cloud contact centers and telephony services. Most of these companies have no experience and are lacking functionality and reliability. You know, the other issue is some of the hosted systems that have been labeling themselves as a cloud provider for years. You know, if a provider is just hosting your contact center and you still have to install clients on the PC and go through upgrades, that's not the true cloud solution. So where do we stand as far as cloud adoption, right? As we can see here from this adoption curve, you know, Gartner came out last year and they said that right now we are right at the tipping point of entering that early majority phase. According to Gartner and a different research paper from Dimension Data, they're saying that by 2025, 80% of the customers will be using some cloud platform for their communications. We're also seeing some big moves in the industry. Just recently, we saw Avaya purchase Spoken for their cloud product. We saw Cisco last year purchase BroadSoft. Genesys, a year and a half ago, purchased Interactive Intelligence for their pure cloud product, and NICE purchased inContact for their cloud product as well. You know, cloud is will definitely be the default option for contact centers in the near future. So one of the questions we get a lot about the cloud is pricing, right? People want to understand how the pricing is going to be different for them running a call center. And I have a couple of exercises here that are going to run us through pricing, but I just wanted to make sure that we cover a total cost of ownership as it regards to cloud versus premise. So here in the first scenario, I have a customer that has about 100 agents. They're using 2 channels, voice and chat. They're doing 100% recording. They have dashboards and workforce management. So if they already have a premise-based system installed, we have, you know, we can see that cost comes over 5 years, comes up to be about $750,000. If they go to the cloud, that cost over 5 years, you know, it's about $690,000. As you can see from here, the monthly cost is much higher. They have a $10,000 a month for 100 agents that they have to pay the cloud provider. If we look at the same example with a premise solution, but this time we take into account the purchase of a brand new premise-based system. So if we add up the price of hardware and software, we can see the number go up to over $1 million. And the cloud price basically remains the same. And this is what we're seeing in a lot of the industry. Over 5 years or over 10 years, people are reporting that the cloud is saving them about 20 to 30% in TCO. So now that we know a little bit about some of the challenges that IT and the business leaders are facing when managing the contact center, now we have a better understanding of the pros and cons of the cloud. I just wanted to take a little bit of time and discuss some little methods for moving forward and working with an IT vendor. So this is the methodology that we usually use when we engage with our customers. So we usually start off with an assessment where we interview the IT managers, we interview the agents, we spend a couple of days on site, we do a full review of the current technology, we document customer journeys and come up with a roadmap to try to create an effortless customer experience. After that, we usually stay engaged with the customer either by doing project work or through a managed services agreement. A managed services agreement basically allows us to take over some of the IT functions as they relate to call center. After we work with a customer for a while, I mean, really our goal is to become a trusted advisor and try to guide them through a seamless transition to the cloud. So a little bit more about our managed services. You know, I think this is a unique offering in our space, and I think it's playing a major role in the cloud transitions, right? So, like I said earlier, managed services allows us to take over some IT functions, and we usually split those functions in 4 different categories. So the first one is operation support, where we take care of some of the everyday changes, like adding agents, changing workgroups, changing skills. The second category here is the break-fix support, where that mostly relates to the systems. Any issues going on with the system, we usually get alerted. So we have 24/7 monitoring. We get alerted on those issues, and we respond and try to be proactive so there's no downtime and the business is not affected. The other part here is functionality enhancement, and this is basically work that we do with customers to come up with new projects. So these are changes. These are system upgrades, custom development, and usually we have to scope them out and make projects out of them. So here's a quick story, and I'm going to try to make this short because we're running out of time, but you can actually read the case study on our website. If you go to our website, GoMindsight.com, and you go under our blogs, we have a case study just about this particular customers, but really quickly, we partnered with this company about 4 years ago, and they were looking for a way to replace their contact center platform because it was too complex for them to manage, right? So after we completed our initial assessment, we found out that they only had the solution for about 4 years and took them about 3 years to implement it. We found out that they had a really good platform, but the previous vendor, actually they had 3 different consultants, 3 different vendors in there, and they had customized the environment so much where the IT department wasn't able to manage it, right? So as part of our roadmap, we had to convince them that they didn't need to change the contact center platform. They should stay on the current platform, but should remove most of the customizations, right? So after we simplified the environment and removed most of the customizations, we initiated a work-from-home program that allowed their agents to work from anywhere in the world. We installed a workforce optimization software and developed a long-term roadmap that includes a future move to the cloud. You know, as a result, I think they substantially saved a lot of cost by not having to purchase a new call center platform. They improved the patient experience, increased the agent attrition, and really allowed IT to control their own environment. I think that was the ultimate goal, is to allow IT to grow and have control over their own environment. Like I said, this case study, you have all the details on our website, so if you have some time to do some further reading, that would be great. In conclusion, I just wanted to mention that, IT departments can work with vendors and can work with businesses, and they can all try to work together to maximize the investment that they have today in their current contact center platforms. We can work together to try to create an effortless customer experience, and eventually, plan that seamless move to the cloud. I think that's all I had for you guys today. I'm going to pass it over back to Marlee for some closing remarks.
Thank you, Clade. John and Clade have both given us a lot of information to digest, and if you're wondering how to take the first step from here, MindSight can help with that journey. Our contact center team can meet with you to perform a business review and an in-depth technology roadmap where we work with your team to develop a business plan for your contact center journey. We are premier partners with some of the leading on-premises and cloud contact center technology providers. Our breadth of knowledge can help guide you to the best solution for your organization. So with that, I think we would like to now open it up to questions. I can see that several questions have come in, and I don't know that we're going to have time to get to all these, so if we don't answer your question, we will get back to you. But John and Clade, if it's all right with you, what I'll do is read them off and then toss them over for you guys to answer. So the first one here is, we definitely have interest in the cloud, but we're not in a position to make that move right now. Are there other things that we can do right now to take advantage of some of the benefits that cloud offers?
Yeah, I can take one. This is John. I can take that one. Yeah, I think that's an interesting position that I think a lot of companies find themselves in. Maybe they do have that large investment in a premise solution, and it's just not in the cards to say, like, let's put that aside and and make a switch today. So I think when you're looking at that, some of the advantages of the clouds, I think you could get from looking at some of those like managed services offerings, for example, maybe taking some of that stuff out of your IT's hands, off their plate more than anything, so they're not, strapped with trying to support the contact center. Quite honestly, in my career, what I found is IT looks at the contact center servers as like these black boxes that sit on the rack, and they don't really want to look at them funny because they're not sure what they're going to do. That's obviously painting with a broad brush, but we do find that a lot. The other thing I would think about, I guess, would be if you're looking at adding some ancillary products, maybe you're looking at a WFM solution or a recording solution, you may not want to make that prem-based investment if you think you might move to the cloud. In the future, you may not want to make that prem-based investment. So a lot of the major providers, whether it be NICE or Verint, Calabrio, they have cloud products that are now available or soon to be available. And you could do a cloud-based solution for one of those types of products and use it, for however long you want to use it, with the understanding that if you switch to a cloud platform in the future, more than likely that type of, again, recording, WFM, something like that, analytics, it's going to be built into that platform. So you didn't have to make that upfront purchase on it, but it gives you a little bit of agility to move in the future.
Great. Okay. Another one we've got here is we'd like to hear more about how we can bring web chat into our contact center.
Yeah, I could do that one again. So it's another interesting one. I think what I found, again, if we're thinking about a cloud solution, you may already have that option. It's probably just something that needs to be configured. But I think what you'll find as well is if you have a premise-based solution, a lot of times when we walk into companies, we kind of go in there and we talk to them like, okay, we're doing a roadmap for them, like, where are you at, where do you want to go? And what they tell us is, yeah, I know that we've been upgraded 4 times over the last, 4 to 6 years, and it seems like we never get any new features out of those upgrades. We just, we get told that over the weekend the contact center is going to be upgraded. We come in, maybe our agent interface changed, maybe we noticed a different splash screen, but everything else is the same. So one thing I would look for is what features have been added in your solution. Is the web chat already available? Quite often in a modern contact center solution, even a premise-based one, it may be available to you. So it might be as simple as either getting the correct license for it, or, maybe just configuring it, working with your, firewall team, things like that to get the web chat, through the firewall out to your website. So it's something you'd have to look at. There's probably a very good chance that web chat is more available to you than you would think, even if you're not on a cloud solution.
Great. Okay. There is one more I think would be a good one to kind of toss up here for the group, and that is, how are some of your customers in the cloud currently handling security concerns around sensitive customer information?
Yeah, I can take this, Marley. I already talked a little bit about security. One of the things that we have to keep in mind is that a lot of these cloud providers are multi-tenant, meaning that they're hosting a lot of different customers on their cloud solutions. Like one of the providers that we work with, they have several banks that run on their cloud solution. They actually have the Department of Defense as a customer on there as well, right? So as part of hosting this high security, these customers that have high security needs, they've gone out and they've gotten over 20 different security certifications, and all of their customers reap the benefits of the security certifications. If you think of a premise system, some customers might go out and get certified on PCI or get certified on HIPAA, but it's very hard for a single customer to go out and get 20 different security certifications. So overall, I'll definitely say that cloud is by far more secure than premise overall. But when it comes to security, that's something that people have to evaluate themselves and work with their cloud providers. A little known fact that is kind of interesting is that one of our providers runs on AWS, so whenever they do a presentation, they mention AWS. And one of the facts that they bring up is that the CIA actually stores about 30% of their data on AWS cloud, right? So I don't think it can get any more secure than that.
Great. Well, I don't know if that's reassuring or somewhat terrifying. But anyway, so that wraps up, I think, the questions that we've got here for the group. I would like to thank everybody for joining us today. We would like to ask for your feedback on a survey that's going to be following. MindSight's definitely interested in having more events, so if you have suggestions for topics or any feedback that can benefit us, we'd really appreciate it. And with that, thank you for attending today.